Landing offers, says Anna. Okay, that's where you feel stuck. So you're getting all the way to the point except for the offer. Okay. Anyone else? Interviewing? How about getting recruiters to give you a call back? How about getting the interview in the first place? And anyone else have any? Getting the interview, Kathleen says. I'm suddenly trying to get into UX UI and game dev, so I want to learn about the general process. All right. Thank you, Andrea. Getting the interview. Okay. So then this is good because I am in the right place today. So as Jared mentioned, we do help people get jobs in tech, specifically high-paying jobs in tech. The problem is I sometimes suck at tech. So if I have malfunctions, I apologize, but I will get right into the thing. So let me present. And then can you guys just see my screen here? So I condensed it down to 3 steps instead of 5 to make it even faster and more effective for you guys. So we can jump right into it. So let's go. Let's see. So as Jared mentioned, well, I don't know if she mentioned this, but I've been running this company since 2016. I've also been in the sort of like recruiting, coaching, development, staffing space for, gosh, I don't know, I feel old now, but I don't know, since 2006 or 7. And we have coached a little over 500 professionals, specifically in tech. And here's the biggest regret, undoubtedly, that they always tell me they've made. And that regret is they were never taught how to build a meaningful career. And they never shown like how to think about their career holistically and then reverse engineer the process. This is kind of why people jump around from job to job, never being able to figure out how to have a career trajectory that they're proud of or meaningful. And so that's like sort of their biggest regret. And this whole presentation, our whole philosophy in Career Sprout, FYI, is not just to show you how to get a job. More than that, it is actually how to teach you to build a career that you find meaningful. So this is the point. It's that they weren't ever taught or weren't shown the reason why they should even think about how to build a career. And I'm sure many of you may feel the same way when we've gone to boot camps or college or talked to career counselors. They always just tell us to slap together a resume, apply to jobs, start paying off loans, and then it'll figure itself out. And I don't think that that's the right approach, and I don't think that really serves anyone. So as a result, when most people don't think about how to build a meaningful career, they kind of spend years jumping from one job to the next. They sort of feel underutilized, they feel directionless, they feel undervalued. And then they start to sort of like self-doubt creeps in, and they begin believing that building a career that's lucrative, meaningful, fun, all the things that they want, that most people want, is out of reach for them. And then usually what that leads to is they just kind of settle. And so what we're going to teach you is complete opposite of all of that, right? And I always want to start by saying 2 things. I say this, if you've seen me on social media anywhere, I always talk about this, that your past never dictates your future, and we can control what we do in the future. And you'll see after this that you're only a few tweaks away, I'm willing to bet, from landing a job offer that can change the entire trajectory of your career. So by the end of this webinar, what is the takeaway? I want you to feel in control of your career. I want you to be proactive. I don't want you to feel reactive. And I'm going to teach you the exact strategies we teach our clients that help them land offers that usually pay them between $25,000 to over $100,000 more than what they were used to making. And they do this typically on average in less than 67 days. And most of them never, or not never, I won't say never, but most of them hardly, if ever, spend time applying to jobs. Because I know you guys have done that, and you know it just doesn't work, or it's not effective. So the only thing I would like for you to do is, if you find something valuable in this presentation, please pay it forward and share it with whomever you feel is in need of it or could benefit from it. So as Jer mentioned, I'm not going to spend too much time on my background, but if I was on a presentation, I would wonder, why is this person talking? Who is he or she, and whatever, right? So As I mentioned, I've been in the staffing space, the career coaching space since 2006 now. I've built a $72 million staffing agency. My own career was completely meaningless, not eventful. I was super underpaid for the first 6 years of my career. And because I got the opportunity to recruit for companies like Google and Facebook and Coca-Cola and Boeing and literally you name it, I learned a lot about how these types of companies hire. I learned what their interview process is like. I learned about how they negotiate, what they look for in resumes, how to get the resume in front of the recruiter. And then I began applying all of that to my own career. That helped me become one of the youngest executives of a publicly trading company back in 2016. And then I just use these same strategies to teach our clients, and it's just become sort of like a repeatable process that works over and over again. And so let's quickly just recap what's happening. I'm not going to go into the whole economics and the macroeconomics of everything, but we saw starting in 2020, inflation started rising. Interest rates have now gone up. Because of that, people stop spending. And because of that, companies feel the pressure. And you've seen the layoffs happen. It's literally, you open up LinkedIn. I have LinkedIn open up right now. All you hear about is who's been laid off and how tragic it is. And in 2022, 160,000 people were laid off. And literally as of yesterday, 59,000 have been laid off. And I'm sure that number is going to increase as time goes on. But what we're seeing in our program is completely different results. So people are struggling to land high-paying jobs, and we're seeing the complete opposite because of the strategy we use, because of the strategy you're going to see. This is a product manager who just transitioned from healthcare to product, got a 45K increase. Our other client, Guarav, just got a job at CVS. He got a 100K increase. Who's this? Catherine? Oh, I love Catherine. She just got 100. I don't know what the thing is. The final offer is 425. So you could see stuff is very different in our program. Here's just a few more examples of people. Here's an engineer, Aditi, who just landed a couple offers. And then this is just some of our most recent wins from Q3 of last year, Q4, and then more importantly, the past 4 weeks. So what I'm teaching you here, what we're talking about today, is none of this is magic. People always say, oh, BS, that's crazy. And it's not crazy. It's just we have a proven system that brings predictable results. And that is the system we're going to teach you today. Also, I should have put this in the front. Sorry. I should have actually had this in the front. See, this is what I mean. My text game is not strong as your guys is. We are going to offer somebody a free seat in our coaching program today. So the only way you can enroll to win is if you see something valuable in this entire presentation of all the slides I have. If you see it's valuable, please take a picture of it, post it on LinkedIn, or tag me on Instagram. I don't really care where. Post it, and then I will select one of you. And if we have time, I'll just select one of you on this call. And then you will be enrolled into our coaching program. So our onboarding specialist will get in front of you or get in touch with you and get you onboarded. All right. So what are the 3 steps? 1, this is the most important one. It's not number 2, it's number 1, is we need to make sure that we are removing outdated belief patterns. The word outdated should have been in there. You see how, again, my slides are not the strongest. My strategy is strong, my slides are not. So removing outdated belief patterns. Number 2, like I mentioned, we need to have a proven system. And then number 3, we actually need to know how to execute that system correctly. So that's what we're going to cover today. So let's start with mindset. This is what we're talking about. Mindset plays the biggest role in all of this if we have to remove these outdated belief patterns. And the outdated belief patterns we're talking about specifically today are only related to what we believe works and doesn't work about finding a job. And so to start with all of this, I would always encourage people, and any client we work with, we always encourage them to have a growth mindset. That means you believe that you are destined for growth. You can't have a fixed mindset and said, nope, that doesn't work. I've tried it, doesn't work, because if you believe that, it's going to be true. I built this. Here's the funny thing. I built this on Canva. You can tell I'm very cheap because I keep the watermarks on. I'm not paying them the $11 it costs to remove the watermarks, okay? They asked me today too, right before I pushed present, they're like, do you want to remove the watermark for 11 bucks? And I said, nope. So why do most people struggle with their mindset? Well, it's simple. Think about how we were raised. We are dealing and we're fighting with decades of entrenched beliefs in almost everything that we do, right? The mindset that you have is directly visible in the choices that you make in your life, and more specifically, the choices that you make daily. And this is, as I was saying, your mindset is built by accident. And it kind of grows slowly over time. And how do we form some of the beliefs that we have today? It's simple. It's like how we were raised. Parents, right? Bullying in school, social circles, what we were taught in school, the information that you choose to consume daily has a direct impact on what you believe, and what you believe, more importantly, what you believe in for yourself. So this creates a little bit of an imprint. I remember growing up, so I'm an immigrant. I was born in Africa. My mom is from India. My dad is from Africa. And when we moved here, my dad had I think, 11th grade degree education. My mom went to college, and then he came here barely knowing any English, started a business. It was a printing business. And for 3 years, he could not make more than like 25, 50 bucks a month. And so my mom had to take 2 jobs to really support our family. And I'm an only child. So I didn't really get to spend that much time growing up with my parents. But what did I believe growing up was that we were meant to be poor, and that we have to work extremely hard just to get out of poverty. And I didn't believe that I would ever find success. You know, it's funny, I still deal with some of these things today. My wife, it drives my wife crazy. So think about some of the experiences that you've dealt with growing up. What are the things that you've believed today that are most likely not true, but it's really hard to shake that belief pattern? So what we do with our clients is, first and foremost, we show them how they actually step by step can achieve what they want to achieve in their career, but it starts with believing in themselves. And so giving them a new set of beliefs to adopt, giving them new information. I'm reading this book. I'm reading this book here called Abundance. I know New Yorkers think us Californians are so woo-woo and all about green juice and all that stuff. But in this book, he talks about, the author is Deepak Chopra, he talks a lot about how first you have to develop a new set of information to first even see what's possible for you. And when you finally see what's possible for you, new options start kind of showing up. And then those options create solutions, and those solutions create brand new options that you didn't even know existed. And so that's kind of, that happens through the power of brain plasticity, is stretching your belief patterns. Okay, so the only belief that matters today is that you can grow, and if you believe that, you can start applying it. So what are some of the mindset shifts that we need to make today, especially today during all the layoffs going on and the world feeling like it's falling apart? A lot of people are like, why should I even try? I don't even think companies are going to hire. There's too many people in the job market. There's all these people laid off from like the big boys, the Googles, the Netflix. So then why would they even hire me? It's not about that. One thing that's not on this presentation that I want to really stress here today, and FYI, if you guys can go over by an hour, do it. I'm more than happy to answer as many questions as you can. But one thing I want you to believe today is that the number one thing that works in a job search is you have to come across to employers as the solution to the problem they're trying to solve, not someone looking for some job. If you can view yourself as a solution to the problem employers are trying to solve, and then you can articulate that through your resume, your LinkedIn, your interviewing skills, when you send outreach messages, your perceived value is already high. It starts off higher. And that's what we want to get with here. So that's some of the mind shift change that we need to make, is that I can actually add value. There is something in my experience, in my knowledge, in my skill set that will add value to someone out there. So then the problem that you're trying to solve after that is, well, who needs to solve the problems that I'm good at fixing? And what I'm about to teach you today, I want you to just try it. I remember when I first started my staffing company, This was when I spent from 2006 to 2012, as you saw on that slide earlier, I had 10 different jobs. They were dead-end jobs. There were some where I was selling like yellow page ads. And by the time I met my wife in 2012, I had not made more than $48,000 in my life. And then she was a teacher. And this is when we were dating, but I was like, great. Like, if this works out, we're literally going to be broke because teachers make nothing. I am making nothing. Her parents and her family were like, what do you see in this guy? And I had a mentor, and this right before we started the business. And I was so scared to start this because I barely had anything, right? And he was like, well, what's the worst case scenario if you try this and it doesn't work out? And I said, well, I guess I'm just going to go back to being a slimy recruiter. And he's like, great. Well, then how does it feel to be living your worst case scenario? And that hit me like a ton of bricks. So if this doesn't work, what's the worst case scenario? You go back to doing what you're doing today. So I encourage you to try what you learned today. And remember, you're only one job offer away from changing the entire trajectory of your career. So just take action from what you learned today, even if it's some of it. All right, here's a watermark Canva picture again for you guys to see. So here are the proven systems that bring predictable results. And before I go into it, make sure that the system I show you, you follow it in order. Do not jump around from step to step. The analogy I like to use here is like a fitness trainer. A few years ago, back in 2019, I hired a fitness trainer, and he was like, all right, Gaurav, here's what you're going to eat. Here's how you're going to work out. Here's your recovery plan. And then every Monday, I would meet with him and he'd say, great, what did you eat this weekend? And I remember specifically one weekend I had like 4 pieces of strawberry cheesecake because I'm like in love with strawberry cheesecake. And he like kind of went off on me and he's like, what the hell? Didn't I told you not to do that? Look at now, you injected your system with all this sugar and your macronutrients are off and blah, 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 blah. And he's like, I told you just to follow the system. Your stuff, you can't see results if you don't follow the system. So the system I show you today, please follow it in order and don't eat the cheesecake. Okay, as tempting as it sounds. So what are some of the outdated belief patterns when we start the job search? Most people start their job search, FYI, from a place of one of the following or all of them: scarcity, lack, or fear. They are disengaged with their current job. They hate their boss. They're underpaid. They're undervalued. They've been laid off. So they feel fearful. And they're like, I got to get away from this negative situation as fast as I can. So then what's the first thing most people do, or some of you have done, if you've done this, is slap together a resume, talk about everything I've ever done, go and apply to hundreds of jobs, hardly hear back, get ghosted by recruiters, tell a few friends and family, hey, I'm looking, keep your eye open. And then they barely get interviews. And then if and when they do finally get an interview, they're so nervous because they haven't had any real practice and they feel so much pressure. I got to get this job. Now they either oversell themselves, women especially undersell themselves. They talk too much, talk too little, and then they choke, they burn, they don't get the interview. Now you go a few more months, this happens again, and then finally you get some job, and by the end of it, you're like, you know what? I'm just going to take this job because it's the only thing I can get right now. Are you guys familiar with this? Someone's smiling. So yeah, okay, that means yes. All right. So that's what people believe to be true, that when they start their job search, I got to put together a resume. I got to go apply to hundreds of jobs. And here's what we're going to shift you to. We're going to get away from that methodology and we're going to shift over to this methodology. Okay. I'm saving this here because I really want you to save this. Okay. Here is the system. It's 5 steps. Step number 1 is what we call in our program, we need to develop your career nirvana, which is what is your ideal situation. Remember, we want to reverse engineer your path. We don't want to be reactive. You want to first know what your destination is and then figure out what the right next step is. Once we know what the goal is, once we know what the right next step is, only then should we start even thinking about how to restructure our resume and our LinkedIn profile. And then what we're going to do is what we call intentional networking. We do what's called sending VARs, value added reach outs. I'll talk about that soon. And then we go into consultative interviewing, and then we intelligently negotiate. This is literally the thing that works all the time. You don't have to do anything outside of these 5 things. So remember, we're going to go into the process, but your job search never starts with your resume. So career nirvana, what does that mean? You guys all live in New York. For some reason today, I didn't read, I should have been more prepared. I thought I was talking to people who are just based all over the place. You guys are in New York. So let's assume, because this is the example I created, let's assume for 1 second, you guys didn't live in New York and instead you lived in LA where I am. And I said, Anna or Karina, Kelly, I want you to drive from LA to New York. And you cannot use any GPS device. No map, no nothing. You just have to figure it out. Well, we know that you're smart enough to know that, fine, okay, and let's assume you had to listen to me for some strange reason, right? You know that, okay, if I just drive northeast long enough, at some point, I will get to New York. Would you guys agree? At some point, you'll figure out how to get to New York. There will be signs that say you're heading towards the right states. But what we don't know is how long is it going to take you? How many times will you get lost? How many times will you get turned around? How many detours? How much frustration? How much gas will you waste? All those things. At some point, though, you will get to New York. Now, where in New York you end up, who knows? You could be in Buffalo, and most people don't really want to be in Buffalo. Apologies if you live in Buffalo. You can end up in some hood that's dangerous, and you don't want to end up there, but you'll get to New York. But what happens is by the time you get there, because the journey took you forever and a day, you're going to say, you know what, let me just chill out for a second because I'm tired. I wasted all this money on gas. I'm frustrated. I'm going to just end up here in New York or Buffalo for a second. But instead, if I said, Kelly, Anna, all of you, if I said, I'd like for you to drive from LA to the M&M store in downtown Manhattan, and this time you can use any GPS device that you want. Well, now what we know what you're going to do, right? You're going to literally put it in your phone or whatever, and you're going to have what? The fastest possible route to your destination. What that thing, those directions will not tell you is don't take this turn, don't take that turn, don't do this. It just literally tells you what to do. Now you get there in the most quickest amount of time possible, no frustrations, no detours, no loss, whatever. And at the end of it, you get M&Ms out of it. So think about this as it relates to people's careers or maybe even your own careers. How many times have you stopped at companies you don't want to stop at? How many times have you been turned around? How many times do you feel tired, frustrated, whatever? It's usually because you don't know what the end situation is. So if you go back to this thing that I was saying, number one is find your career nirvana. It's finding your M&M store. We need to figure out what your M&M store is. And an exercise to do that is what we call career mapping. Career mapping can be an effective tool if done correctly. And in the most simplistic form, what you're doing is looking at people. You don't need to recreate the wheel when you're building your career. Just look at the people who are in the roles you aspire to be in 5 years from now, 7 years from now, 10 years, doesn't matter, right? And because the world changes so fast, maybe just look at 5 years from now. When you see what they've done, now study 10, 15, 20, 30 of these people. Usually what you'll find is a common throughput. Each of them have taken sort of the same similar path to their M&M store. So what that should indicate is, what do I do next? Because you can see what they did next. They usually started off where you are today, maybe a boot camp, maybe something like that. Then they took this first role, they worked on these types of activities, then they moved into this is how they got promoted. And the more you study people's careers, the more telling signs you'll see of what they each did, and they usually look very similar. This is like a very basic sort of example. It can be a little more granular than this if you'd like, but this is very much a basic example. So your action item, when you start this whole thing, is to first take some time to define your career, or sorry, your M&M store. Where do you want to be? And what I tell people and what we help people with is get as granular as you possibly can, because that makes your vision a lot more clear. What type of company do you want to work in? Startup, enterprise? Do you ultimately want to be in consulting? Do you want to be working? Do you want to grow the corporate route? Do you want to be a director of engineering? Do you want to be a CTO? What is it? What kind of industry? Ideally, what kind of salary would you like to make? Would you like to be leading teams, or do you want to be an individual contributor? Do you prefer high base, low bonus, low equity, or do you want to take some risks and go to venture-backed startups and potentially have stock in something, right? Get as granular as you possibly can. What kind of culture, what kind of benefits, what kind of coworkers do you envision yourself being around? The second thing we do, once we've defined your career nirvana, is we go and study. Now you should know what your next step is, right? We go and study those job descriptions. This is really critical, by the way. So if your next role is a full stack developer, go and study the job descriptions of full stack developers for full stack developers. And I would say study 15 to 20 of these. Because why? Again, you'll see a throughput that these job descriptions keep asking for the same 5 to 7 things. Plus, most job descriptions will tell you about what you're working on. Well, then that indicates what problems these companies are trying to solve. When you know what problems they're trying to solve, you can ask yourself, have I done this directly? Have I done this somewhat indirectly? Do I have the transferable skills needed to be able to solve this problem? And then as you start looking at the responsibilities of each of these job descriptions, if there's something that you can speak to that you've done directly, done indirectly, have the transferable skills, those job descriptions need to be on your resume and LinkedIn profile. And the reason is resumes and LinkedIn profiles show up on search results and they rank on these job boards purely based off of keywords, just like the websites we search for on Google. Have any of you ever gone to page 2 and definitely page 3 of Google? They say that's where people go, that's where websites go to die, right? Is page 2 of a Google search result. Same thing with your resume. If your resume is not keyword optimized, that's what the recruiters are searching for, then it doesn't rank. So people, all these people, they talk about, oh, should I put open to work on? Should I not put open to work on my LinkedIn? It's like, well, it doesn't matter. As your LinkedIn, it won't, even if you put it on, you can't expect recruiters to reach out if your LinkedIn doesn't show up on their search results. And the only way to know what keywords to put is by studying job descriptions. Now, when you write your resume and your LinkedIn profile, it is imperative that it has a very clear and concise summary. And this serves two purposes. One, it helps it rank higher because of the keyword optimization thing we just talked about. But two, it tells the world what problems you're capable of solving. So again, you come across as the solution to the problem a company's trying to solve. What I hate when I see resumes is, I am a fast learner. I've worked in a fast-paced environment. I'm a self-starter. That's all fluff. You have to make sure your resume is quantifiable and has quantifiable terms, quantifiable achievements, quantifiable impact. By the end of the day, your resume should articulate a few things. One, what's the value that you bring to the market? Two, what is the impact that you've made and or capable of making? And then three, who is that relevant to? You don't want to try to be relevant to everyone, just a specific niche. Niches equal riches is what they say. So do you see how this resume shows exactly what this person is, the problems that she can solve? This person got a job at Google, by the way, very recently, and she did not get laid off. And later, if we have time, I'll go on live on LinkedIn right now and show you some of the profiles of our clients. They are all structured this way. They have a very clean summary. Then they have some skills. These skills come directly from the job descriptions. The more of these you put, the higher your resume ranks. And tools. If you want to put interest, you can. Sometimes it's kind of neat because you might find somebody else who's also traveled or done whatever you've done, doesn't matter. And then you always want to have some sort of achievement and or impact. If you want to see if your resume ranks or not, this is a great tool to do that. It's called jobscan.co. And what you do is you literally just paste the job description on one side, on the right side, I guess, and then your resume on the left. And then it'll tell you that how optimized your resume is. FYI, this is a company that wants to make money. So they will try to sell you on some stuff. They allow you to do it for free, and then Their goal is to make you feel like your resume is not optimized enough. Now, we ran this test on like the last 500-600 people we've worked with. If your resume ranks 60% or higher, you're good. Don't try to aim for the 80 or 90. It's that they're just trying to get you to believe that you need to pay for their thing, and you don't. So you should, I mean, I think you're going to get this presentation, but save this. It's just a good example of what a summary should look like and read like. And then again, I'll show you more. Now, if it's done correctly, this is what happens. This is just a client of ours who recently went through the process, got a call from Amazon, got a call from, and he hasn't even applied yet. So your action item for step 2 is study 15 to 20 job descriptions of your target job. Notice the consistencies that you see from one to the next to the next. And then start building your resume to see if to make it as keyword optimized as you possibly can. And then if you need to, use a tool like jobscan.co to optimize it. All right, the magic happens in this one. Step 3. Remember what we just talked about a few minutes ago? Where people just sit there and apply to hundreds of jobs? Remember that? I'll tell you a little secret. When you start your job search, the name of the game is not how many applications can I get sent out each day or each week. The name of the game is how many conversations can I get set up this week? Show of hands, would you rather have 100 applications sent out each week or 2 conversations with hiring managers each week? 2, or I guess I'm not 2 hiring managers, right? I'm like, show of hands, and I didn't even tell you what, but you get what I'm saying. So in this part, once you have your resume and your LinkedIn optimized, get that on every job board you can imagine. Angel.co, built in. You could even put it on LinkedIn, Indeed, and then there's a bunch of others I can give you a list of if you'd like. So that takes care of one thing, because now it's optimized, people will reach out to you, but we don't want to rely on that. What we want to do is reach out to people. And so intentional networking is really key, because what you want to do is get conversations set up with hiring managers and people who work at the companies that you admire and or want to work at, or that you see job postings for. And you can start very simply, and I'll show you in a second how to find hiring managers and recruiters. Or you can reach out to former colleagues who now that you once worked with, who are now at companies or now at the companies you want to work at. You could reach out to friends. You could reach out to people in your boot camp, alumni, acquaintances, and more importantly, join user groups. This is a great user group. There's other great user groups on LinkedIn too. The more you join these things, the more job postings you'll see, and more hiring managers you'll be surrounded by, more leaders you'll be surrounded by who work at the companies you admire. And then we want to reach out to them. Okay. Most people, when they do a reach out, I guarantee you, they say, hey, my name is Anna. I saw a job posting. I think I'm a great fit for this role. Would love to chat. That's what most people say. But if you think about that and why it's so ineffective or why it hardly works, is because what you're saying to somebody is like, hey, give me your time. Give me your time. I think I'm great. Give me your time. But the person reading that message has gained 0 value from what you said to them. And on top of that, most of these people are extremely busy, right? So why would they want to spend time talking to someone who has given them, like, they see these messages over and over and over again? They basically think, why are you any different? So instead, what we send is a value-added reach out. And what that looks like is something very specific that solves a problem they're trying to, that they're experiencing. So you should know as an engineer what the problems that most people are trying to solve, right? They're trying to get releases, product updates, build new apps, mobile apps, whatever it might be. And they want to get it out faster, less bugs, so that they can generate more revenue and bring in more users or whatever. So when we reach out to someone, it's way more important to say, hey, listen, I was just doing some research on the role that you have open. It looks like you open this role because you want someone to help solve for XYZ things, which you find in the job description. I'd love to walk you through how my background with blank has helped companies solve similar things, right? And I did that through doing 1, 2, 3 things. I'm being very generalist, but it's more eloquent than that. If you feel like this background would help your team, I'd love to set up a call with you to explore some synergies for us to potentially work together. Now, if I'm reaching out to a senior leader or an executive who works at a company I want to work at, and I'm telling them like, hey, it looks like you're trying to solve for these problems. I'd love to walk you through how I've helped solve these problems, or why the skills I have would help you solve these problems so that you can achieve XYZ results. The chances of that person reaching back out to you are a lot higher than sending out 100 applications. So FYI, our clients, just so you know the work they're putting in, we list out about 20 to 30 companies they'd love to work for. Then we find 5 senior leaders that work at this company that could potentially be their hiring manager, director of engineering, CTO, whatever, right? Director of product. And then we send this message to them. And then we actually send a very similar message to recruiters. If it's a bigger company, again, 5 recruiters. So if you have 20 company and 10 people and you send out, that means what? How many messages have we sent out? 200, right? So think about that. You sent out 200 messages. Now, our clients right now average a 43% conversion rate with this message, or a similar kind of message. Of course, we tweak it depending on who we're reaching out to. So if, let's say you did this and you weren't even close to 43%, you were half of that, you had 21%. I would rather talk to 21 people rather than send out 100 applications and hear back from maybe 5 recruiters. And now take it one step further. Let's say out of the 21 people you talk to, only 10 of them say, you know what, Anna, actually your background seems really good. Why don't we start the interview process right now? Or like start the interview process with us. Now you have 2 benefits from that. You literally just started the interview process with a senior leader championing you throughout the whole thing. Plus, senior level executives have way more authority to authorize going above the pay scale that they budgeted for. If you talk to a recruiter, let's say you're looking at a role for 150, and the role that let's say you want to get paid 150, but the role you're looking at only pays 140 or 120. And a recruiter talks to you and they said, hey, Anna, what are you looking for? And you say 150. That recruiter is going to say next, right? Because you're way over the pay range. They can't think outside of the things that they've been told to do. So instead, if you talk to a senior leader who works at a $500 million, $5 billion company, $100 billion company, whatever, and they say, by the way, what are you looking for? And you're like, hey, my range is 150 to 160. They're gonna be like, okay, whatever. They'll go to HR and they'll say, can you get Anna in the interview process right away? By the way, she's looking for 150. It's not a big deal. Because to a $5 billion company or a $500 million company, paying you an extra 30, 40, 50K more means nothing. Right? To me and you, that means a lot. To them, it means nothing. So this is the benefit of starting with them. It just starts the interview process a lot faster, it makes it way more effective. And on the back end, you get paid more for that. So now the assignment is, once you've done step 1 and 2, step 3, go and find 20 companies you'd love to work for. And then you can look for the hiring managers or senior leaders who work at these companies, and then use this type of message, fill it in with your own information, and message them on LinkedIn. This is just a never-ending process, by the way. It's not just for you to look for a job, but if you build the right network and you nurture that network, over time, that network will pay you an incredible ROI. This is our client, Wesley. He was a PM when we first started working together. He was studying something at Hampshire College. Like, this is one of those colleges, by the way, where you can choose your own major. And he studied like something about aliens. And then he wanted to work with us. I was like, dude, I have no idea how the heck I'm going to even help you. And he wanted to get a product role. So his first job was product. It was a facilities coordinator, the guy who sets your desk up and your laptop up and all that stuff. This is at Snap, when Snap was cool, by the way. But then he finally got his product role, and then he got his senior product role or whatever. He did such a great job executing these types of messages so well that he got so many phone calls, and he just started building relationships with all these senior leaders. So then finally, when he left Snap, he reached out to some of the people he had made connections with, built relationships with, and got a job at Atrium. Took him to 125. Then when he got laid off during COVID, April 2020, it took him 26 days before he landed his next job, which took him to 250. You could reach out to him. He's like I call him a teddy bear. He is a very kind person. He'll tell you everything. But the reason he's able to do this so fast is because he's just built a good relationship with people, and those people helped him get his foot into the door of the companies he wanted to work at. And his perceived value kept going up, right? This is just someone who did this last year. He sent this message to the CFO at Qdoba. Look at that. The guy literally responded. I wish I took the timestamp, but he responded and said, yeah, I'd love to set up a conversation. So you can do this with C-level executives. A few more messages. This girl got, actually Gina was an engineer, by the way. And she got calls from Airbnb, YouTube, Google, you name it. This is a message right here, Brett. This guy, our client, sent him a message, and look at what this hiring manager said back. I applaud you for your bold approach and self-advocacy. That's pretty cool, right? So again, you don't need 100 people out of 100 people to reach back out to you. You only need 10, 15. So what are your action items? Right here. Okay, so what happens in this approach? What happens when you've done step 1 through 3 correctly is you will inevitably start landing interviews and conversations. So what we want to implement when you start interviewing is what's called a consultative interview versus what's called a transactional interview. A transactional interview is what? They ask you a question, you answer. They ask you a question, you answer. They ask you a question, you answer. Have you ever had a lunch or dinner with a girlfriend or a friend or a date, and they only talked about themselves? You had to keep asking them questions and they talked about themselves. You probably left that experience feeling like, ugh, I'm not going to call this person back for a while. Because why? They didn't take the time to get to know you, what you're going through, what you're feeling, what you're dealing with, how are things with you. The same thing happens in an interview. You know, like companies like McKinsey and Bain and Accenture, they can get away with charging clients like Disney hundreds of millions of dollars to work on a project. Because what they do is they'll go to Disney and they'll say, hey, looks like your water parks and resort division is looking to do this cloud infrastructure implementation project. Tell us how it's going. How long has it taken you? What's not working? What's your timeline? What's it going to cost you if you don't finish it by your timeline? What kind of resources do you have to associated to it, deployed to it, whatever, right? They find out all these little pain points. They realize Disney's not doing a good job. They'll say, you know what, let us see if we can help you. They go back, they put together some presentation better than mine, and they'll come back and say, hey, you know what, we actually think we can help you. We can add these resources to the project. Here's the timeline. It'll be under budget. And by the way, if we achieve it, then this is how much revenue you can expect to save or make or whatever, right? And by the way, Disney, it costs you $1 gazillion. And Disney's like, oh, okay, here's $1 gazillion. Thank you, Bain or McKinsey. Why did that happen? It's because Bain and McKinsey and all these people, they first tried to get the pain points out of Disney, and then they sold themselves as a solution to those pain points. You will be no different in an interview. And the only way to do that is to make sure that you are getting them to express their pain points. So the first question we ask, this is such a powerful interview question. This sets the whole tone for the rest of the interview. When you start an interview, before you jump into any answer, I always tell our clients to say, hey, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me today. If you don't mind, before we jump into everything, I'd love to know, what was it about my background that made you want to meet with me today? Why do we ask this? Because the hiring manager will be like, you know what? I love the fact that you did this and your GitHub said this, and oh my God, that you did this and whatever. And now we know what's relevant to them. More importantly, we know what's completely irrelevant to them. So now we know what we should be focusing on for that rest of the interview. That makes sense? When you do that correctly, look, this is very recent. Dude, I was able to ask what you liked about my resume, such a simple thing. And then my entire game plan was something else, and I switched it up on the spot. Not only that, but she told me she wants to talk to me about whatever. This is like, it's so simple. It's such a simple question. You have to have the audacity to ask it. But if you ask it and they tell you the answers, which they always do, now you know what to talk about for the rest of the interview. Then for the remainder of the interview, of course, they're going to ask you behavioral questions. They're going to ask you technical questions, whatever. But throughout the interview, if you can make it conversational, you want to get to know their pain points as well. Why is this position open? How are you measuring success in this role? By the way, how long have you been trying to achieve whatever initiative they're working on? What's worked really well and what hasn't? What would you hope to change? By the end of the year 1, what would determine that this was a successful hire for you? You see these questions that if you keep probing enough, they're going to tell you like, oh my gosh, like what's been completely overwhelming is that we just don't have enough people doing this thing or that thing, or finding too many bugs or whatever. And now you can start positioning your experience as the way to be the solution to the problems they're trying to solve, or problems you're experiencing. So we want to be very consultative at this stage of the interview. STAR methodology, if you haven't used it, it's just a great way to structure your answers. We're not going to dive into this. You can Google this. It's very clear cut of how to structure your answers. Okay. I shouldn't have jumped in. There's two powerful questions. I'm going to teach you something. So when we started our staffing agency, or not staff, a coaching company a long time ago, we hired clinical psychologists to teach us how to build rapport with people whom we perceive to be of a higher status than us. Okay. And how do we effectively sell to them without coming across as salesy? So I'm going to show you the second to as you notice that the interview is wrapping up, the second to last question you want to ask is this. Hey, would it be okay as we wrap up if I quickly just recapped what I think you're looking for in this person? In the history of history, no one has ever said no to that. They will always say, yeah, sure. And now you tell them, okay, what it looks like, it sounds like what you're looking for, someone to come in and do this and work with this and help this team out, whatever it is. And then you say, did I miss anything? They'll say yes if you did, or no if you didn't. The reason we're doing this is because we want to end by showing them that we were practicing active listening. When I can reiterate what someone just told me concisely, it'll make them feel heard. And it's such a cool way to come across consultative to make sure you understand what their challenges are today. And then we ask the final question. Again, this takes audacity. Then you say, great. So based on that recap, is there anything about my background that concerns you about my ability to step into this role effectively? Because I would love the opportunity to clarify or confirm your concerns. Do you guys want to know what we say when they do give us a concern? It's super salesy, but it doesn't come across as salesy. Okay, it's a technique that these psychologists taught us called absorbing versus deflecting. So let's say, for example, they were like, you know what, Kelly, our only concern is that you don't know how to bake a cake. And let's say that concern is actually valid, like you don't know how to bake a cake. So most people in that situation will do one of two things. They'll be like, oh, no, I actually do know how to bake a cake. They'll make it up. Or they'll say, no, but I do think I could learn how to bake a cake. What's actually happening behind the scenes subconsciously is the other person who's hearing you say that, their wall is immediately going up because they're like, here we go. She's going to try to sell us some stuff, right? No, I can. No, I can, or whatever. People will try to do that. So instead, we use a technique called absorbing. What we just did was deflecting. Absorbing is, you know what? You're right. I actually don't know how to bake a cake. But when I was with my last company, one of the biggest things I had to learn was how to bake a cupcake, which I didn't know how to do either. So what I did was every single day I would go home and study recipes, watch YouTube videos on how to bake a cake or bake a cupcake. Then I would spend time every single week with some of our top chefs or bakers to learn how they built or how they baked their cupcakes. And for the first 30 days, my cupcakes were disgusting. You would not want to take a bite out of them. By the 90th day, I had one of the best-selling cupcakes in our entire bakery. And I would take that same resourceful approach here with learning how to bake a cake. So you see what you've done is, one, you've absorbed their concern so they feel heard, they don't feel sold, and then you've redirected them from a negative to a positive. Now, what happens if that concern is invalid? Like, Kelly, you actually know how to bake a cake. The general response most people will say is, no, I do actually know how to bake a cake. Again, now you're subconsciously, their walls go up. Here it goes. Here they come, trying to sell us. So instead, we just absorb that too. And we say, you know what? That's my fault. I should have done a better job of clarifying that. In fact, when I was with this company, I did have to bake a cake. I baked strawberry cheesecake. I baked this cake, whatever. And then Guarav ate all of it. So you see how that works, the absorbing versus deflecting? It's a really powerful way to conclude an interview because you're leaving them with the positive and you've addressed all of their concerns. Because most people, when they leave interviews, they're like, oh, shoot, I should have said this, or oh, should I not have said that? Or did I get this point across clearly or whatever? And then they can't sleep at night. This allows you to make sure everything is on the table. And then you can, rest assured that you did the best you possibly could. That's what's most important. This whole thing, when it works, this is a girl, Sonia. I'm not going to tear up. I usually tear up when I talk about her. Sonia was a single mom when she started working with, and like we work with our clients over and over again. There's no, once a client, always a client's our sort of motto. When we worked there, she was a single mom making $15 an hour. Since then, she's been married and stuff. But this approach, she's used it multiple times. And the most recent job that she got was at Wayfair. And so she says it here, like it's like, it's crazy that I was getting paid $15 an hour and I'm at 200K. And the reason I think this is so cool is because like, this is what happens when you believe in yourself and you just focus on the right things. You have no idea the changes that can come into your life. Right? This is that growth mindset stuff we're talking about, all that woo-woo stuff, green juice stuff that you guys make fun of us about. This is just kind of an indication of that. Okay, lastly, negotiation before we wrap it up is most people think negotiation is just about base salary. I always want to say focus on the total comp and focus on the big picture. Remember what the M&M store is. The better question to ask yourself is like, instead of, is this a low or high base salary, is does this job get me to where I want to be faster and more equipped? Does it have a great leadership team in place? Does it have a great bonus structure? Does it have a great equity package? Is there opportunities for growth and learning and all the things, benefits, work-life balance, things that make you happy? So you have to know what your values are first, and then see if this company's values align with yours. And these are great things to know because you can negotiate multiple things outside of just your base salary. And you should never take it personal, like it's about you winning and them losing. It's about both of you finding a middle ground. So the other thing that I think is important is most people always negotiate based on where they're at today or what they used to make. That is the most irrelevant way to negotiate. You always want to negotiate based on what your value is in the market, not what you make today. Like you see people who spent like 10, 15, 20 years at one company, typically they're really underpaid. So, or even if they've been at one company for 5, 6 years and they're underpaid and they make 70K, they would be very happy with like a 80, 90K job. But there's a good chance that they are now today worth 120, 125 in the open market. So if you do your research and you know what your skills would pay or what the value of your skills are and experiences are, that's the point to negotiate from, not what you make today. So it's crucial that you do your research. Great tools to do your research are mysalaryscale.com, Glassdoor, Payscale, salary.com. They even LinkedIn Insights, which is free to everyone. They have some good data, whatever. So those are good places to do it. Now, if a recruiter ever asks you during the interview process, what's your salary range? FYI, they're not allowed to ask that. And you would just say something like this. I'd respectfully not like to disclose that information, but based on the research I've done and the companies I'm interviewing with, they are offering between blank and blank. Okay. What we're doing here is we're making the recruiter know two things. One, that you've done your research so they can't just lowball you. But two, if you say something like the companies that I'm interviewing with, whether it's true or not, they're going to think in their mind that you could be off the market at any given point. So then now they can act with more of a sense of urgency. So the X's should be higher than what you're, like, let's say you're looking for 130. When you say they're offering between X and Y, the X should be like 137.5. And then the Y should be something slightly outrageous, like 155. Just slightly. Okay, because who knows, like I said, companies that make 500 million, 63 million in profit, whatever, they can pay you more. And then what you want to avoid is you never want to just say, oh no, that's too low. What I'm looking for is this. Instead, what you want to do is provide them with options. So what I mean by that, here's how it looks. So before, this was someone who got a job at TikTok in our program. Look at this, 145, 25% bonus or whatever, 15 days of PTO. So even though I liked his offer and I said, wowza, I still knew there was room to negotiate. Here's the exact template we use in our program, literally the exact template to negotiate. So he got offered what, 140, right? So we said, thank you for the offer and the opportunity. At TikTok, whatever, based on the research that I did, plus factoring in my experience, my achievements, my background, I found that more comparable salary ranges anywhere between 153 and 165. Remember how I said give us a very specific number so it makes it look like you've done your homework? Lastly, the two other roles that I'm in the final stages of the interview process with, which he was not, are offering 160 plus. So then we say, I would like to respectfully ask if there's any flexibility to close the gap. This is the way you ask. Intelligently negotiate. So we provide them with options. Remember how I said provide them with 2 options or 3 options sometimes? This is where you can mix and match what you think is valuable to you. So this is what he said. I wrote this for him. So what they came back with is this. They couldn't change the bonus, but they gave me 2 options. Now they gave him 2 options, either a higher base with more RSUs or slightly lower base with higher RSUs. Didn't really matter. So I took the 155K so he can get more in stock. 63% salary increase. So this is the template. Remember how I said, don't overcomplicate things, just keep it simple, follow the system, and it just works. And when you do it right, you get things like this. I should have removed her name, but whatever. You can message Stephanie Diaz now. But she did the same thing and she got 55K more. This guy got whatever here you see here. So this is, this is why it works. So I always end by saying, if you feel like what I just went through is crazy or confusing or whatever, there's always 2 ways you can get into our ecosystem. Our coaching program is capped right now, so there is no room in it. But you can always apply if you ever want to be in our coaching program. And when we have spots open up, we will book a call and do the things. This is how you do it. But more importantly, if you just want to get into our ecosystem faster, we did launch just about less than a month ago a free community where we actually host weekly coaching calls with job seekers. And we have free resources in there. Literally every single week, we are in there doing coaching calls with each of you. So it's just a good way for us to be able to give back. And for people who have no access to our coaching program, this is a good way to at least get them started in the right path. So very least, join this thing. You'll meet some really good, there's a lot of VPs and senior level people in here, but there's also strong individual contributors. So you can network in here. People are networking, people are connecting with each other. And then again, every single week we do host calls. So these are the 2 ways you can get into our ecosystem. And I think that should wrap it up. Oh, here's a quote that I love. So this is just for you. So thank you so much for going over the time limit with me. I know I went over by 7 minutes, so we can open it up to Q&A now. FYI, before I start answering questions, was that helpful? Was that overwhelming?
That was very helpful. Thank you.
Good.
Yeah, I really, I feel like you made it more like concrete what we're supposed to be doing, because I used to be a design director in the fashion industry, and I did that just like intuitively, because you know what I mean? I have like an extroverted personality, and I just sort of, I make friends with everyone, no matter what part of the industry they're in. So I always had somewhere to jump.
Yeah.
But I didn't really like write it down.
You know who does not have an extroverted personality? Are most engineers.
Yeah, you know, that's why I'm going into UX UI, because
Yeah.
I can get along with anyone. A lot of my friends now are software engineers and they have problems communicating. And I grew up with an immigrant family who didn't really communicate at all.
Yeah.
So I had to help them communicate to other people. So that's my superpower, like being able to read people's like body language, what they
Yeah.
really need, what they're looking for, and like micro facial expressions. And
Right.
like, oh, I think you need this, you know, or just anticipating like what needs to happen. So
Yeah, 100%. I'm
Gaurav,
glad that
I
this
really
is helpful.
want to echo that, because I think what I really liked about this one, and I've attended some such other ones, that you were specific and not just, like vague tips or very general tips that everyone kind of knows. So I love how you were specific about, and you broke it down into the various steps.
and each step had some kind of a specific action. And I remember you were asking to save a summary of something you were showing, but I was like, I was kind of doing something and my hands were full and I couldn't save that snapshot. So I'm hoping if you could just, post that somewhere, because I know the recording will come, but that's expected to take about 2 to 4 weeks. So I would love to have that before.
Sure. I'll pull it up. But I think, Jer, aren't you sending this presentation to everyone or no?
Oh, so you're posting the deck
Yes.
somewhere? That'd be great.
So
I've
just
been taking
a
screenshots,
reminder
too.
to please raise your hand before talking, so Guarav can call on you, and everyone is in a queue. And yes, this will be uploaded to YouTube in 2 to 4 weeks on the Women Who Code channel.
Okay.
Cool. Here, but I'll pull it up. And then would it help if I drop those links in the chat, you guys? So you don't have to try to. Let me do that.
That would.
Okay, let me do that. And then what's the first question I can answer? Jared, I'll just let you moderate the questions real quick while I'll pull up the summary. I'll actually just copy and paste or I'll pull up the summary screen, but here are the 2 things. The first link is where you can book a call. Thank you guys for joining, by the way. I'm so happy we got to connect. And then here's the free community. Where is it?
Yeah, so everyone, please just keep the questions. I'm going to just go through the earlier questions we had in the chat, and we'll come back around to the people who have their hands raised. So thank you for being patient. The first question is, what do you suggest for a student still in school or just graduating in terms of quantifiable achievements from work experience?
Yeah, that's a good question. Typically, you at least have some portfolio that you've built. Maybe you have side projects you've worked on. Maybe you have internships you've done. It's the same thing that happens with people who have no experience, but they've gone through a boot camp, right? They typically have worked on some sort of capstone projects or built certain things on the side, maybe helped their friends and family with things. These are all valuable things to show. And remember, you're not trying to go for some CTO job. You're going for a role that's appropriate for you at this stage. So the same things apply, which is now go and find the people who are looking for people who are earlier in their careers, and then send them this type of outreach we did, but put your portfolio together and just ask them that I'd love to share a little bit more about how I built this, what I did, what my thought process was, all the things, if you have some time in the chat.
Great. Okay, next question. What are your resume tips in terms of accomplishments for a career changer in web development, previously on the creative side of startups?
Yeah, it depends a lot. That's hard to answer because it depends a lot on where you're coming from and what you've done. But the biggest sort of piece of advice I can give to someone who's making a career, what's it called? You're trying to transition into a completely different career, is you want to always ask yourself, what are the transferable skills that I have today that are applicable to where I'm trying to go? And they don't have to be A to B, or A to A, like apples to apples. There could be a lot of things that you may have done that could still help companies solve problems. This is why studying what the job descriptions are asking for is really key. Remember how I said everything is built logically upon each step is built logically one upon the other. So I think like when you know what they're looking for, when you know what kind of projects they're working on or initiatives they're trying to solve or whatever, then you can say, listen, I may not have direct experience. Like we actually had a client get a job as a customer success manager, and he's worked at 7-Eleven, like the actual store, right? And so the retail store. And so it was really cool because what he said was like, look, I don't have SaaS experience, but I've helped this 7-Eleven grow by implementing XYZ sort of tools and like marketing initiatives. But I also helped replicate those same tools for some of our other 7-Eleven stores and other owners. And they have seen an increase in boom, boom, boom. Now that had nothing to do with SaaS, but it showed a lot of initiatives, and it showed that he knew how to work with marketing and whatever, and he got interviews this way. And then from there on out, the more consultative we were, the easier it was for him to kind of articulate these random transferable skills that he built at 7-Eleven retail into what a SaaS company needs. And he got, like, I could show you his profile. But anyway, it's okay, because then we'll get into all the, it'll take away from all your questions. So we can do that later if we have time.